This is John Rasmus, occult researcher. In this episode, we're going to be talking about smoke monsters. You're probably pretty familiar with smoke monsters. Game of Thrones has a smoke monster in one of their episodes. And this smoke monster appears and it kills a guy. It sticks a smoke spike through his back. Looks like that hurts. And it does hurt, and he dies. In this episode of Lost, you can see it leaves this cave. An elderly woman rushed to collect some wood from the edges of the jungle, but soon returned screaming in horror as a misty dark tubular smoke emerged from behind her and soon engulfed the terrorized baby. The smoke monster in Lost is very famous. It's definitely tubular. It travels in a tubular fashion. And there it goes. It's pretty corny CGI compared to today's standards. There are a lot of different shows that feature, like I mentioned, Game of Thrones. Let's see, True Blood has a smoke monster which looks a lot more detailed than the Lost smoke monster because he can form and have arms that can grab you, I guess. And this guy on the show describes it as an Ifrit. An Ifrit is Arabic for a supernatural creature. It's considered an infernal jinn. And a jinn is a spirit-like creature that is pretty much a demon. Demons are invisible entities, but in this episode we're going to be talking about more genie-like smoke monster type creatures. Genies in a bottle. I know that story came from some ancient texts, but I'm not going to be focusing on genies. Let's look at this one last story. The Shadowy Clouds of Cheshire. In 1953, a farmhouse owned by Harold Crowther was attacked by a tall, black shadow person, which killed 53 of the farm pigs. Just 2 days afterwards, Mr. Crowther found in the backyard of his home a shapeless black cloud with two prongs projecting from its back. The entity, about 7 feet in height, approached him, stopped a few feet away, turned towards his outhouse, and vanished. Similar legends are found in Argentinian folklore, where a dark, sinister creature called El Pizzo is said to attack unsuspecting victims. I did a search on El Pizzo, and it says he's a shadow creature. So this is specifically a smoke creature I'm talking about, not a shadow creature. Now the thing about demons is some can materialize into smoke. It doesn't mean they are smoke. It just means that's one of their forms they can materialize into. On Supernatural, there is a witch who does some spell, and I thought this episode was interesting. You can clearly see a pentagram with some symbols in it, and they're trying to keep the witch out and be protected from her, and so they pour all this salt on the ground. They pour all this salt, and they're trying to stop this evil witch. They're trying to stop her, and yet they're using salt, which is a form of black magic. Pouring a bunch of salt around something to protect you is in and of itself a form of magic, black magic. And some people will say it's white magic, but that's neither here nor there. To me, it's magic, and magic is magic. Smoke comes out of all these people. It's almost as if they're all possessed. I don't know the backstory. I did not watch the whole episode. I just looked for this one part. Definitely pretty interesting. Of course, the David Bowie episode I uploaded. Let's take a look at that. So you can check out the video I uploaded about David Bowie. It's called When David Bowie Saw the Devil in 1976. And these graphics I created myself, so I can freely show them at any time. This art I created myself. David Bowie saw a smoke-like creature appear in his swimming pool. Very interesting. This happened supposedly in 1976, and David Bowie's wife saw not the manifestation, but she did see bubbling in the pool spontaneously when he was trying to banish it. And she also saw a stain in the shape of a demon on the bottom of the pool. So it seems that a lot of people have seen smoke monsters, which led me to this video. This video is from the Prophecy Club, and I haven't watched too many Prophecy Club videos, I'll tell you that much. But the ones I have watched, there's some interesting ones, and they're hit and miss. Some of them are definitely hit and miss. I'm going to cover that in a future episode, where a lot of these guys are doing their best to expose the occult, and then they go ahead and start talking about Harry Potter and start talking about Pokemon. If you talk about Harry Potter and Pokemon, no one's going to take you seriously anymore. But he said some key things which made me take him seriously, which is what I'm going to cover in this episode. So I'm going to ignore his Harry Potter and Pokemon comments, and I'm going to focus on the interesting things. His name is Stephen Dollins. He's an ex-witch / warlock. He's an ex-Satanist. He's an ex-witch coven Satanist priest. And he's an ex-LaVey Church of Satan priest. People use that against him, the LaVey Satanist connection, claiming he's fake because LaVey Satanists are atheists and they don't believe in any of this stuff. The fact is, this guy joined the LaVey Church of Satan via the mail. And so he's not really he never was. He lived in Oklahoma, he lived here and there. He joined via the mail. He sent some money, he sent the application, they sent him congratulations, you're a high priest in the Church of Satan. Now, he says because of references. He knew somebody that was already a member. And so that's realistic that they would promote him to that, even on his first try, based on his age and maybe what else he put in there. He claimed he read many books on the occult and did a project in school proving that black magic works. And that's one of the things that led him to black magic, but his father dying was the last straw. When his dad died, he turned to black magic. And this guy's story is true, in my opinion, at least these parts. I'm gonna tell you why I believe that's the case. Here is a very interesting story about a smoke monster, in other words, a demon that manifests itself in a smoke-like fashion. This story is from Complex Magazine, an interview of Ariana Grande describing an extremely bizarre incident where she saw a demon appear in her room. It's entitled, Ariana Grande Says She Smells Demons. The question is, have you ever seen an alien? Her response, not an alien, but I have had a ghost/demon experience. I was going to sleep about 2 weeks ago. I had just gotten off the phone, and as soon as I closed my eyes, I heard this really loud rumble right by my head. When I opened my eyes, I stopped immediately, but when I closed my eyes, it started again with whispers. Every time I closed my eyes, I started seeing these really disturbing images, like red shapes. Then I opened my eyes and got back on the phone and was like, I'm really scared and I don't want to go to bed tonight. And then I scooched over to the left side of my bed, because that's where the best service is in my room. and there was this massive black matter. I don't know what it was. What? It was like a cloud of something black next to me. I started crying. I was on the phone, like, what do I do? What do I do? And they said, tell it to F off. I thought, I'm not going to do that. It's going to upset it. So I'm just going to chill and not feed into it because all it wants is fear. It feeds on fear. I watched it move to the front of my bed, and then I fell asleep on the phone. I woke up and it was gone. The next day, my friend Tyler was staying with me. She said she was trying to sleep and her body felt paralyzed almost. And she described the same exact thing I saw. And the fact that the friend saw the exact same thing is crazy. But the fact that Ariana Grande can see demons and saw a smoke-like demon materialize next to her, that is crazy stuff. But I believe it's true. Now here's an episode of Constantine. I don't watch this show, but I did a search for shows with smoke monsters, shows with smoke demons, and here is a wizard, some type of sorcerer or warlock type mage, and he's shooting smoke out of his hands, casting some spell, and the smoke goes down the chimney. And here's a girl. This just reminded me of the Ariana Grande story. And she's playing with her dolls. And guess what happens? Smoke monster comes out of the chimney. And I don't know exactly what happens. Other than this, it pretty much attacks her. And she drops the doll. But that really reminded me of Ariana Grande. You know, I wonder if someone sent this entity to her, you know? If someone purposely tried to attack her. It's hard to say. But now I'm going to be talking about the story of Stephen Dollins. When Stephen Dollins saw something extremely crazy. Very similar to what Ariana Grande saw, except he knows what it is, he knows what it was, because he summoned it. Stephen Dollins witnessed a smoke demon, or a demon materialize in smoke. And let's take a listen. Now, there are those who will say that Stephen Dollins isn't telling the truth, but he legitimately knows what he's talking about. There are a few key reasons why I know he knows what he's talking about. One reason is this.
Grotto, by the way, in witchcraft you have covens, and that's 13 young women, it could be older women, but 13 women, then you have a high priestess that rules over them. In Satanism you have what's called grottos, and there are no certain number of men or women, it's just all mixed. Then you have a high priest and a high priestess that rules over them. And he said he was going back to take over a grotto on the West Coast, and they needed somebody to fill his place. And they thought I was the one that might be just in position for that. And he said, what we want you to do is we want you to continue to come to meetings. So I did for the next 6 months. And my high school biology teacher became my mentor, taught me everything I needed to know.
A coven is 13 young women. Now that really reminded me of the David Bowie video, Black Star. There are clearly 13 women, 13 young women in this coven. You can count them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's not a coincidence that there are 13 young women. These are not allegedly portraying witches. This is most definitely 100% a portrayal of a witch coven. And these are portraying witches. Now, I'm not saying David Bowie had anything to do with that, because the fact is that David Bowie did not direct the video. So I 100% have to credit Johann Renck for that happening. Johann Renck is a black magic fan, a Crowley fan. This guy is credited with saying he loves Aleister Crowley and the occult. He's big into that stuff. So he's the type of guy that is going to know that a coven is 13 women. So these 13 witches, which is what they represent, they have a skull. I'm not going to try to dissect what millions have already done. This is simply a representation of the fact that Stephen Dollins is telling the truth. These are 13 women. This is a coven. Covens, just a tiny detail like that is a detail that only someone that really at least vaguely knows what they're talking about is going to throw out and mention. And then they use this witch as a human altar. Human altars is very common in the practice of witchcraft. Let's get back to Stephen Dollins' story. Let's just give some background and some detail on his life.
He said, who referred you to me? And I said, Dave, the drummer. He went in and called Dave, just so he could confer that actually Dave did refer me. And he said, okay. He said, just a minute. And he went back in and he made another phone call. And 15 minutes later, he walked back in the room and said, it's all set. And I said, what's all set? He said, you're going to be asked to come to a meeting. You're going to receive a phone call. He said, you be ready to go when that phone call comes.
Now that really reminds me of Eyes Wide Shut. Remember in Eyes Wide Shut where the keyboard player accidentally tells his friend, played by Tom Cruise, about the party and invites him? Well, that guy had been waiting for a phone call. He said he doesn't know when they're going to call. And this isn't necessarily an Eyes Wide Shut party, but it's a very secretive witch party. And they don't invite outsiders unless they have good references. This guy has good references, so take a listen.
Don't call me to try to find out when they're going to call. I don't know. But when they call, you better be ready to go. I said, okay. I waited for a month for that call. And it came on a Thursday night. I had a big test Friday morning. Dad had just told me, better get to bed, son. You got a big test tomorrow. And I said, yeah, Dad, I'm going. 11:45, the phone rang. Got up and answered it. Lady on the other end identified herself as a woman named Alexandria. Said she was a priestess of a coven. She said, here's the address. Here's how to get there. Come now. I'm looking at my watch and I'm sitting there. It's almost 12. It's almost midnight. She said, we know. Come now. And if you don't come now, you won't get another call. You won't hear from us again. I said, well, I got to get this information. So I went over there and I walked into this apartment. And here was Alexandria, identified herself. She introduced herself and she said she was glad to meet me. And I walked in and I noticed that it was just a regular apartment, except that most of the women there were nude and semi-nude, and they were all sitting around in this white circle painted on the floor. And inside that circle was a five-pointed star. And on the candles lit at each point of that star. And they were inside that thing, and they were singing, and they were chanting, and they were humming, and, I had no idea what the song was. I started humming along so I didn't look out of place. And they said, now what we're going to do, we're going to sit you inside that circle, and don't get out of there. And we're going to send people back to you one at a time, and you ask them anything you want to ask them. But we sit you in that circle, don't get out. And I said, why is that? She said, because we've been charging the air with all of the spirits, and we've been really summoning up our deities, and you're an outsider. And if you get outside that circle, you may be subject to attack from whatever's still left over. I said, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. So I got in there and I sat down, and sure enough, they came back one at a time, and they sat in front of a candle, and I asked them everything I wanted to ask them. How do you cast a hex? How do you make a love potion? How do you do a love spell? How do you summon spirits? And by the time I got done, which was 4 o'clock the next morning, I left there and I had a big notebook, and I knew then I was ready. So I got back to the house and I started reading through all the things that I'd been told. And I said, okay, this is really great, but if I'm going to give a speech on this, I'm going to have to say that I actually tried these things and I know for a fact that they don't work. So I got my friends together and we started doing things out of there. All the things that they had told me, hexes, love spells, curses, everything we could think of. And you know what? Every last one of them worked. So then I'm thinking, hey, maybe I better change over a little bit here. Instead of proving that it doesn't work, maybe I better set out to prove that it does work, because I've already seen it. I gave my essay and I gave my speech, got an A+ on it, walked outside the classroom. 2 girls were waiting for me outside. Said, we've been watching you. We know that you have inborn powers. Now, I had no idea, because I had never said anything to anybody about my childhood. Said, we know you have inborn powers. We can take those powers, we can generate them and make you into what we think is your destiny. I said, what's that? And she said, just come to this meeting. We're going to have a meeting next Friday night, midnight. You come. I said, okay. They gave me the address, wrote down the address, told me how to get there, a little map. And sure enough, on that Friday night, I drove over there. And it's in the Rissy district of our city. And, you know, come from a lower middle class, you don't go up in the Rissy district, you know, you don't even have any business up there. Well, we were driving around up in there, and all of a sudden, I turned the corner, and I recognized the house, and it was my old high school biology teacher. And I pulled up in the driveway, and I got out, and I went up to the door, and I thought, man, I've got the wrong house. Knocked on the door, and you know, I was shocked when he answered the door. And he was dressed in a black robe, holding a black candle. And he said, I'm glad to meet you, Stephen. He said, come on in, we've been expecting you. And sure enough, my old high school biology teacher came out from the back. And I said, you too? He said, yes. And now I was looking for the circle on the floor, so you can imagine I was pretty relieved when I didn't see any circles, you know, painted on the floor, and people were dressed. So I felt pretty much comfortable. The only difference was that on the wall, on his wall, on the right-hand side, was a black cross hanging upside down. And then as you go back to the halls, on each side of the walls, there were pictures depicting of pictures of hell, like demons casting people off into hell flames with pitchforks, things like that. And I looked at him and I said, you're a devil worshiper? And he said, yes. He said, we know where the true power is. And I said, oh. And so he said, I want to introduce you to someone. Man came out of the back. He was about 6'2", thin, had a hood on his head, still in a black robe, carrying another black candle. He walked out and introduced himself as Michael. And Michael said, glad to meet you. He said, we're very interested in you. He said, we've been watching you very carefully. In fact, we know things about you that you don't think we know. Now that made me feel real comfortable. Then he looked at me and he said, we think you just may be the new blood we're looking for. Now I want to tell you something. You're in a group of people that are holding black candles, they're dressed in black robes, and you know they worship the devil, and they look at you and tell you that you're the new blood they're looking for. First thing that goes through your mind is, oh my God, they want to sacrifice me. But that wasn't the case, and he must have read my mind, because he said, no, that's not it. He said, our leader is going back to a grotto.
Now, the Nude Women, you can see photographs. It's pretty easy to find on Google Images if you want to see something like that, but they use women usually as a human altar, usually a naked woman, and this is very common in these occult ceremonies, whether they are the atheistic version or the witch version that actually believe in the supernatural. Now, I have read comments, people claiming to debunk this guy because he doesn't know the system of Satanists. Now, this guy lived in Oklahoma. He lived in other podunk areas, tiny towns. He said tiny towns where everyone knows everyone. He didn't live in the big cities of Los Angeles. He didn't practice atheistic Satanism. He practiced an entirely different brand, despite the fact that he got a letter from the Church of Satan, LaVey, Satanism, in the mail. He practiced something completely different from that. So here's the story of how he became Anton LaVey Satanist.
Staring at me was a black book, and it was the Satanic Bible by Anton Szandor LaVey that hadn't been there the first 2 times I turned that rack around. I went up there and I said, do you have any more of these? The clerk said, we didn't even know we had that one. What is it? I said, never mind, sell it to me. I think I paid about $5 for it. Took it home, read it from cover to cover, even started trying to memorize things out of it. Went back and shared it with my girlfriend at the time. She said, oh, this is great because this is the way that I've believed all along. I said, well, cool. When I get to be a high priest, I'll bring you in and make you the high priestess. She said, well, that'd be good. So when I got back to Alva, sure enough, not a week had passed, there was a church letter in the mailbox, a reply from them. Not only had I been accepted into the church, I had also, through the referral of Michael and his group, been given the honor of being high priest. And that's what I did for the next 7.5 years. I led those people in Oklahoma.
So in Oklahoma, he sent money and an application to the LaVey Church of Satan. They sent him back a congratulations, here's your card, you're a high priest. That church pretty much hands out high priest to everybody, I have heard. And they even handed one out to Marilyn Manson, I believe. He's a celebrity, so it's understandable, but he might think he's a high rank, and I don't think he is, because this guy got one. Seems everybody got one. Getting a club membership card to the LaVey Church of Satan is kind of like getting a Mickey Mouse club card. It's like getting a Nintendo Power Club card. It's like getting the Disney Club card. And, I've been meaning to join that Disney Club, You have access to that D23 Disney convention. Get to see stuff early. I mean, Harrison Ford was at the last one, I believe. Oh, Johnny Depp was at the last one, introducing Pirates of the Caribbean 4. Anyway, that's a little bit off topic, but let's hear this last thing he says, which is a little bit off.
And I mean, we did everything. We summoned up demonic spirits to go out and do what we wanted them to do. You see, in Satanism, the Satanists don't actually do anything. You summon up the spirits to go out and do it for you.
Now, he's talking about closer to Luciferianism, and I know that word attracts a lot of, oh, you're crazy, what's Luciferianism? That's just a conspiracy. But he's not one of the big town, big city Luciferians. He was just a podunk Oklahoma City boy in the outskirts of Oklahoma summoning demons. I believe his story is legitimate, and let's take a listen to it.
Well, let's just hurt her a little bit. Let's put a hex on her. Not a big one, just a little one. I said, oh, you mean send something after her just to make something happen to let her know we're there? She said, yes. Okay, we can do that. So what we did is we got in the circle and we summoned up a spirit named Astaroth. Now, this is supposed to be one of the hierarchy of the demons. And over in the side of the room, this orange cloud started appearing. And as it appeared, there started appearing a face out of that cloud. And guess what face it was? The wolf man. The thing that I'd been afraid of ever since I was a little kid. So I'm sitting there trying to make people think that, hey, I'm cool, nothing wrong with me. I didn't want to show fear in front of my people, my followers. And so all of a sudden, this cloud started appearing, and we told it what we wanted it to do. We sent it off, and it was gone. We came out 5 minutes later, came out of the circle, everybody talking, having a good time. We were getting ready to break the meeting up. All of a sudden, this orange cloud started appearing in the side of the room again. And I looked at it and I said, oh, everybody back in the circle, quick. We got back in the circle, and this cloud appeared again. This time, this thing was in a rage. I mean, it was angry. And it spoke to me just like I'm speaking to you tonight. I mean that audibly. And it said, don't you ever send me after a Christian again. And I'm telling you, I mean, that's the power. This woman must have had the blood of Jesus all over her.
So here is the seal of Astaroth, according to the Key of Solomon, I believe. It's an ancient. It surfaced in medieval times. A lot of people have said it's a hoax, but I believe, hoax or not, it works. But it only works, perhaps, if you either A, have inborn connections, or B, just really are in tune with the spiritual world. Luckily, it doesn't happen for most, but this guy had the ability to summon Astaroth. Now, he is in a white circle with his coven members. He said the side of the room, but I always picture the corner of the room, because the corner of the room is where demons reside. Just to let you know, I'm going to have a future episode where I talk about the corners of rooms. The corners of rooms are most definitely a place demons hang out 24/7. They even consider the corner of the room the place to put the altar in actual vote on, and they call that corner of the room the crossroads. It is a portal to a dimension where these demons reside, and when they enter your room, they appear in the corner of your room. I know these things because I've had first-hand experience, but on top of that, I've corroborated that first-hand experience after having read many books. I've read at least 5-6 books that mention corners of rooms and demons residing in those corners.
And I looked at it and I said, oh, everybody back in the circle, quick. We got back in the circle, and this cloud appeared again. This time, this thing was in a rage. I mean, it was angry. And it spoke to me just like I'm speaking to you tonight. I mean that audibly. And it said, don't you ever send me after a Christian again.
Don't you ever send me after a Christian again. That's clearly the wolf from Neverending Story. I just thought it was a good face to put with this story. But that's a freaky story. And I'm not preaching any religion. He just happens to claim that the demon mentioned he doesn't like going after Christians. Make of that as you will, but this is his story. You know, people are going to say you're crazy. My reaction, cuckoo. But the fact is, the supernatural exists, the paranormal exists, and the supernatural is actually normal. The paranormal is actually normal. They're just beyond the realm of our current caveman, very limited science. String theory, M theory, talks about at least 10, 11, 12 dimensions. And I believe intelligent entities reside in those dimensions. If you like my videos, feel free to subscribe. I thank you for watching. Comment, like, dislike, voice your opinion. This has been John Rasmus with Rasmus Occult Research. Be seeing you.